My name is Amarise Holloway, 68 years old, born and raised under the Arizona sun. I've lived through loss before. My parents, my husband, even friends from church who went too soon. But nothing prepares a mother for the day she buries her only son. And yet, what happened after his funeral shocked me even more than his death. Because the very next day, as I was still folding the black dress I wore to Malcolm's service, my daughter-in-law Shanice looked me straight in the eye and said, "This is my house now. Pack your things. You're out by tomorrow." Sevens. Imagine that. Grieving your child one evening and standing on the curb with your suitcases the next. I could barely breathe. Shanice didn't even whisper. She laughed, like it was a private joke between herself and the universe. And in that laugh, I heard something colder than death itself. Greed. If you're reading this, I want you to pause for a moment. Think about your own family. Would the people closest to you protect you, or would they discard you the moment you became inconvenient? Drop me a comment and let me know, because stories like mine aren't just tales. They're warnings. That afternoon, with 4 bags and 2 boxes that held the pieces of my 68 years, I stood outside a house I once helped pay for. Shanice thought she had erased me. What she didn't know was that my son, Malcolm, had left behind more than memories. He left me a key to the truth. And this is the story of how betrayal turned into justice, right here in Phoenix, Arizona. People say karma always circles back. Maybe you believe that, maybe you don't. But I promise you, what I lived through in Phoenix proves that justice has a way of showing up, even when you least expect it. When Shanice slammed that door on me, I felt like the whole world had collapsed. My son's voice still echoed in my ears, that desperate phone call at 3:17 a.m. "Mama, something's wrong." My chest. And then silence. Less than 24 hours after laying Malcolm in the ground, I was told I no longer belonged in the very house my savings had helped build. Shanice smirked as she said it, like she already saw herself free, rich, and unbothered. She thought Malcolm's death was the end of my story. But here's what she didn't know. Sometimes, the worst cruelty plants the seed for the sweetest revenge. Now, before I go on, let me ask you something. Have you ever had someone smile in your face, but secretly hope for your downfall? If you know what that feels like, hit that like button, because this story isn't just mine. It's for every person who's been underestimated, dismissed, or pushed aside. You see, I believed Shanice had all the power. She had the house. She had the life insurance. She had control. And I, an old black woman with nowhere to go, looked like I had nothing. But what Shanice didn't realize is that my son had been watching. He had been planning. And he had left me a gift, locked away in a place she could never touch. And that, my friends, is where this story really begins. It was 3:17 on a Tuesday morning when the call came. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, dragging me out of a half-sleep. I saw Malcolm's name flashing on the screen. "Malcolm. Baby, what's wrong?" I answered, my voice groggy. His reply was broken, strained, like every word was a battle. "Mama, my chest. It hurts. I can't." Sevens. And then, silence. The line went dead. I remember sitting there in the dark, frozen, my heart pounding louder than the quiet house around me. I dialed back again and again, but no answer. Within minutes, I was in my car, flying down the empty streets of Phoenix toward the hospital. The desert sky was still black, the air sharp, but all I could hear was my son's voice gasping through the static. By the time I reached the emergency room, the fluorescent lights felt like knives in my eyes. A doctor in scrubs came out, his tone flat, professional, detached. Massive heart attack. We did everything we could. Sevens. Just like that, my world ended. My only child. Gone at 46. Shanice stood beside me, her makeup flawless even at that hour, her hand resting on her designer purse. She whispered words of sympathy, but her eyes didn't look broken. For the briefest second, I saw something else in them. Not grief, not love, something colder, almost relief. I told myself I was imagining it. That shock was playing tricks on me. But deep down, a mother knows when she's seeing the truth. That moment, though I couldn't name it yet, was the first crack in Shanice's mask. The funeral was held 3 days later, under the heavy Arizona sun. Family and friends filled the church, gospel hymns echoing through the air, flowers draped across the casket. People came to honor Malcolm, the man who had always fixed their cars, tutored their kids in math, or just made them laugh when they needed it most. I stood there, clutching the eulogy I'd written, my hands trembling. How do you sum up 46 years of life in a few pages? I spoke of Malcolm's kindness, his loyalty, his humor. My voice broke more than once, but the congregation carried me with their amens and nods. Shanice, on the other hand, played her role as the grieving widow to perfection. She dabbed her eyes at the right moments, hugged people tightly, whispered thank you for coming, in that soft, rehearsed tone. From the outside, she looked like sorrow itself. But behind the flower arrangements, I overheard her talking to her sister. Her voice was low, but the words cut through me like glass. The life insurance alone will cover the mortgage for 2 years. Without extra expenses, I'll be fine. Sevens, her sister asked quietly. What about Amarise? Where will she go? Sevens. And Shanice laughed. A short, sharp laugh. Not my problem anymore. She's a grown woman. She'll figure it out. Sevens. My blood turned cold. In that moment, I realized Shanice wasn't mourning my son. She was calculating her future, without me in it. I wanted to believe I was wrong. That grief made her sound harsher than she meant. But a mother's instinct whispered the truth. Malcolm was gone, and with him, the only bridge that had ever connected Shanice and me. And now, that bridge had burned to ash. The night after the funeral, the house was still heavy with silence. Guests had gone, flowers were wilting in their vases, and I was sitting in Malcolm's old room, my room now for the past 2 years, folding the black dress I had worn to his service. I thought Shanice might come in to say goodnight, maybe even share a moment of grief. Instead, she appeared in the doorway, her arms crossed, her eyes cold. Amarise, she said, her tone flat, businesslike. We need to talk. Sevens. I set the dress down, bracing myself. This house is in Malcolm's name, she continued, which means it's mine now. I need my space, my privacy. I can't have complications living here anymore. Sevens. I stared at her, confused. Complications? Shanice, I've been here to help. Cooking meals, paying bills when needed, helping you two get this very house with my $62,000. Sevens. She cut me off with a sharp wave of her hand. That was years ago. And Malcolm considered it a family contribution, not a loan. Either way, it doesn't matter. I've made my decision. You have until tomorrow evening to pack your things. Sevens. Her words hit like a hammer. Less than 24 hours after burying my son, I was being evicted from the home I had helped build. Where am I supposed to go? I whispered. That's not my problem, Shanice replied, her voice casual, almost bored. You're a grown woman. You'll figure it out. Sevens. I searched her face for any trace of the woman who once hugged me on Christmas mornings, who called me Mama when Malcolm first introduced her. But all I found was calculation, like she was checking off a box on a to-do list. In that moment, I understood. Grief hadn't hardened Shanice. She had been this way all along. Malcolm's death simply gave her the freedom to show it. And I, standing in the house I helped pay for, was suddenly nothing more than an inconvenience to be erased. I spent that night packing in silence. 4 suitcases, 2 boxes, 68 years of living reduced to what I could carry in the trunk of my car. I folded my clothes with shaking hands, wrapped old photographs in towels, slid my worn Bible into a side pocket. Every item felt like a question. Is this really all I have left? Malcolm's childhood room had once been my refuge, the place I tucked myself away when I felt lonely. Now, stripped bare of my things, it looked like a guest room again, impersonal, temporary, like I'd never belonged. With each trip down the staircase, I half expected Shanice to stop me, to say she'd spoken out of grief, that of course I could stay until I found somewhere else. But she never came. At exactly 6 o'clock the next evening, she appeared in the doorway with her arms crossed, like a landlord inspecting a tenant's move-out. Time's up, she said simply. I zipped the last suitcase closed, lifted it with aching arms, and pushed past her into the driveway. The Arizona air was dry, almost suffocating. We made 3 trips together, Shanice carrying nothing more than a small lamp I had once bought for the hallway, eager to see me gone. As I slid the final box into the trunk, I turned back to her, searching for something, mercy, regret, anything. I don't know why you're angry with me, Shanice, I said softly. If I did something wrong, I'd fix it. Sevens. Her expression didn't change. You didn't do anything wrong, Amarise. You just exist. In my space. In my life. In my way. Malcolm pitied you. I don't. Sevens. The honesty cut deeper than any lie. I shut the trunk, climbed into my car, and drove off without looking back. In the rearview mirror, Shanice stood on the curb, her white blouse glowing under the porch light. For her, it was the end of my chapter. For me, though I didn't yet know it, it was the beginning of another. The Hampton Inn off Route 17 wasn't much to look at. Beige walls, the faint smell of industrial cleaner, a bedspread patterned with shapes no one would ever choose for themselves. But that night, it was the only place I could afford. I checked in for a week, the young clerk barely glancing up as I slid over my credit card, my life reduced to a name on a plastic key card. Inside the room, I lined my 4 suitcases along the wall, like sentinels guarding me against the emptiness. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my reflection in the mirror above the dresser. The woman looking back at me had tired eyes, graying hair, and a kind of hollow in her chest that no doctor could mend. A widow, childless, homeless, all in the span of a single week. I let myself cry then, not the quiet tears I'd shed at the funeral, but deep, aching sobs that shook my body. I cried for Malcolm, for the house I'd lost, for the cruel laughter of Shanice echoing in my ears. But when the tears finally slowed, something else stirred inside me. Not despair. Something sharper. A whisper of defiance. I remembered Malcolm's smile at our last family dinner, the way he had squeezed my hand when Shanice wasn't looking. I remembered how he'd insisted I sell my old home to help with their down payment, promising me, "Mama, I'll always take care of you." Sevens. And though I didn't know how yet, I felt it deep in my bones. Malcolm had meant those words. In that sterile hotel room, surrounded by the smell of bleach and loneliness, I made myself a quiet promise. Shanice thought she had erased me. She thought she had won. But my son had never been one to leave things unfinished. That first week in the hotel was the hardest of my life. Every morning, I woke up to the rattle of the old air conditioner and the hum of traffic outside on the freeway. For a few seconds, I'd forget where I was, then it would all crash down. The empty space where Malcolm's voice used to be, the fact that Shanice had locked me out of the very home I helped her build. It would have been easy to give in to despair, to curl up on that stiff mattress and let the world pass me by. But something inside me refused. Maybe it was stubbornness, maybe faith, maybe just the voice of every black woman who came before me, whispering, "Don't you dare give up now." Sevens. I reminded myself of what I had already survived. The loss of my parents, the early death of my husband, the years of scraping by on a teacher's salary. Each time, I had found a way to keep going. This time would be no different. And I couldn't shake the feeling that Malcolm had left something for me. He wasn't careless. He knew the kind of woman he married. I remembered his quiet eyes at Valentine's dinner, the way he seemed like he was carrying a secret. At the time, I thought it was stress. Now I wondered if it was preparation. In the evenings, I'd sit by the window, looking out at the glowing skyline of Phoenix, and whisper a prayer, not just for comfort, but for clarity. If there was a path forward, I needed to see it. And slowly, a resolve began to take root. Shanice could strip me of a house, of possessions, of comfort. But she couldn't take away my dignity. She couldn't erase the truth. Somewhere out there, Malcolm had left me a thread to hold on to. All I had to do was follow it. It was a Thursday morning when my hotel phone rang. Hardly anyone ever called that line, so I almost didn't answer. But something told me to pick up. Mrs. Holloway. The voice was steady, professional. "This is Jordan Whitaker. I'm an attorney here in Phoenix. I handled your son Malcolm's estate." Sevens. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My first thought was, why is he calling me? Shanice has everything. The house, the insurance, the cars. "Yes, Mr. Whitaker," I managed. "I'm calling to inform you that the probate process has begun, and there will be a formal reading of Malcolm's will next Tuesday at 2 p.m. in my office. Your presence is required." Sevens. I sat up straighter on the bed, the stiff mattress groaning beneath me. Required? There must be some mistake. Shanice made it very clear. Sevens. He cut in gently, but firmly. Mrs. Holloway, I can only tell you what's in the will. Your son specifically named you as a beneficiary. That means your attendance is necessary. Sevens. My eyes stung with sudden tears. Beneficiary. After being told I was nothing, that I had no place, those words wrapped around me like a lifeline. I'll be there, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. When I hung up, I stared at the silent phone for a long time. For weeks, I had felt erased, discarded like yesterday's paper. But now, against all odds, a new chapter was waiting for me. Malcolm hadn't forgotten me. He hadn't left me empty. And next Tuesday, in a law office in downtown Phoenix, I would find out exactly what he had done to protect me. The following Tuesday, I sat in the reception area of Whitaker and Associates, my palms damp against my skirt. The room smelled faintly of leather and old books, a place where legacies were carved into stone, with ink and signatures. The glass door swung open, and in swept Shanice. She wore a sleek black dress and carried herself like a queen arriving to claim her throne. Behind her trailed her brother, Tyrone, dressed in a tailored gray suit, his eyes already scanning the room like a hawk. When Shanice spotted me, her smile dropped into a scowl. What is she doing here? She snapped at the receptionist. Before the young woman could answer, Mr. Whitaker himself appeared, tall, silver-haired, calm as a minister. Both of you are named in Malcolm's will, he said simply. Now, if you'll follow me. Sevens. Inside his office, we settled into leather chairs. Shanice sat forward, hands clasped, anticipation radiating off her. Tyrone uncapped a pen, ready to take notes. I folded my hands in my lap, praying for strength. Mr. Whitaker began to read. The house, the cars, the retirement accounts, all went to Shanice. She nodded approvingly, every word affirming her control. I kept my eyes on the desk, each sentence pressing heavier on my chest. Then, Mr. Whitaker's tone shifted slightly. There is, however, one final provision, he said. He lifted his glasses, glanced at me, then back to the page. To my mother, Amarise Holloway, who provided the down payment for our home, I leave the contents of Safety Deposit Box C-47 at First National Bank, along with all documentation and account information contained therein. Sevens. The room fell silent. Shanice blinked, her smile freezing into disbelief. What safety deposit box? Malcolm never mentioned. Sevens. Mr. Whitaker closed the folder. It was something he maintained privately. His instructions were very clear. Sevens. I sat frozen, heart hammering. A safety deposit box? What had Malcolm hidden there, just for me? Shanice, meanwhile, leaned forward, her voice sharp with anger. This isn't right. That box should be mine. Sevens. But for the first time since Malcolm's death, I felt something powerful stir inside me. Hope. Shanice's manicured nails tapped furiously against the armrest of her chair. Her face, once carefully composed, twisted with anger. This is ridiculous, she spat. If there's anything valuable in that box, it belongs to me as Malcolm's wife, not to her. She jerked her chin toward me like I was some stranger off the street. Mr. Whitaker's voice stayed calm. Mrs. Holloway, Your husband was clear. The safety deposit box and its contents belonged solely to his mother. The provision was signed and witnessed. Legally, it stands. Sevens. Shanice's lips parted, ready to fire back, but her brother Tyrone leaned forward, his voice oily and confident. With all due respect, Mr. Whitaker, wills can be contested. If there are financial assets in that box, we'll argue they should be considered part of the marital estate. Arizona is a community property state, after all. Sevens. I felt my stomach tighten. I wasn't a lawyer, but I knew enough to understand the threat. Mr. Whitaker met Tyrone's stare without blinking. You're free to file a challenge, he said evenly. But I assure you, the language here is airtight. Malcolm anticipated this, I suspect. Sevens. For the first time, Tyrone's pen stopped moving. Shanice turned to him, her voice rising. We're not letting her walk away with this. Not after everything I've been through. That box is mine. We'll fight this. Sevens. Tyrone placed a hand on her arm, whispering something I couldn't hear. But the way Shanice's eyes burned at me across the table told me enough. I sat perfectly still, though my heart was pounding. I didn't know what was in that safety deposit box, but I knew one thing. Malcolm had drawn a line in the sand. He had left something that Shanice couldn't touch. At least, not yet. And for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself a small smile. Because whatever was in that box, I was ready to find out. Mr. Whitaker reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope, thick and weighty. He placed it gently in front of me, along with a small brass key that gleamed under the office light. Mrs. Holloway, he said, sliding the items across the desk. These are Malcolm's instructions. The bank will require this key, along with proper documentation, before you can access the safety deposit box. It usually takes 3 business days for the paperwork to clear. Until then, keep these safe. They are yours, and yours alone. Sevens. My fingers trembled as I picked up the envelope. I ran my thumb across the edge, half expecting it to burn me. In that moment, I felt like I was holding more than paper and metal. I was holding Malcolm's voice, reaching out to me from beyond the grave. Across the room, Shanice's eyes narrowed, locked on the envelope with a hunger that chilled me. She shifted forward in her chair, as if she could snatch it from my hands. I should be the one opening that box, she hissed. Whatever's in there, Malcolm meant it for us, not her. Sevens. Mr. Whitaker didn't raise his tone, but his authority filled the room. Respectfully, Mrs. Holloway, the will leaves no ambiguity. The safety deposit box is not part of the shared estate. It belongs solely to Amarise. Sevens. Shanice's jaw clenched, her nails digging crescents into the leather armrest. Tyrone leaned toward her, whispering urgently, but I caught enough. We'll challenge it. Don't worry. Sevens. I slipped the envelope and key into my purse, clutching it tightly against me like armor. For weeks, I had felt powerless, erased, cast aside. Now, for the first time since Malcolm's death, I carried proof that he had not forgotten me. That in his final months, he had been thinking of my future, not just Shanice's. When the meeting adjourned, I rose quietly. Shanice stood too, blocking my path for a moment, her smile stretched thin like glass about to shatter. Let's be reasonable, Amarise, she said sweetly. We should share whatever's in that box. Malcolm would want that. Sevens. I met her gaze, steady this time. Funny. You made it very clear Malcolm wouldn't have left me anything. Now you're so certain he left me something worth fighting for. Which one is it? Shanice. Sevens. Her smile faltered. I walked past her, the brass key heavy in my purse, its weight both terrifying and comforting. In the parking lot, the Arizona sun beat down hard, but I didn't mind. For the first time in a long while, I felt its warmth not as punishment, but as promise. Whatever waited in that safety deposit box, I knew one thing. It was Malcolm's last gift to me. And no matter how much Shanice schemed, that gift was mine to uncover. 3 days later, I stood in front of the First National Bank in downtown Phoenix, clutching my purse so tightly my knuckles ached. Inside that purse sat the small brass key Malcolm had left me, and the envelope of paperwork Mr. Whitaker had handed over. It felt like I was carrying the weight of my entire future in one hand. The bank's marble floor gleamed under the fluorescent lights as I stepped inside. My shoes echoed faintly, and I felt out of place among the polished businessmen and the young professionals tapping on their phones. For a moment, I wondered if I even belonged here. Then I reminded myself, this was my son's gift, my son's plan. If Malcolm believed I belonged here, then I did. At the counter, I introduced myself, and within minutes a woman in a navy suit appeared. Mrs. Holloway. I'm Mrs. Delgado, the branch manager. Please, come with me. Her tone was warm, but professional, the kind of kindness that steadies you when you feel like you might fall apart. We passed through 2 heavy security doors, each one opening only after a code was punched and a key turned. The air in the vault was cool and dry, smelling faintly of metal and old paper. My heart thudded in my chest. Your son rented box C-47 5 years ago, Mrs. Delgado explained, as she guided me to the wall of steel doors. He visited fairly often. Sometimes he stayed in the viewing room for hours. Sevens. 5 years. My throat tightened. That meant Malcolm had been preparing this long before his heart gave out. He'd known something. Mrs. Delgado inserted her master key while I slid Malcolm's brass key into the lock. Together, the mechanism clicked, and the box slid forward with a weight that surprised me. Larger than I expected, heavier too. She led me into a small private room with a sturdy table and closed the door softly behind me. Take all the time you need, she said. Alone now, I stared at the steel box resting in front of me. My fingers hovered above the lid, my pulse racing. Somewhere in there was Malcolm's voice, Malcolm's plan, Malcolm's truth. I drew in a long, shaky breath, whispered a prayer under my breath, and slowly, carefully, lifted the lid. Inside the box, right on top, was an envelope with my name written in Malcolm's familiar handwriting. Just seeing those letters, curved the way he always signed birthday cards, made my chest tighten. My hands shook as I opened it. Mama, it began. If you're reading this, then I'm gone. I'm sorry I couldn't stay longer, but I need you to know, I never forgot what you gave me. You sold your house and gave us $62,000 for our down payment. You told me to treat it like a gift, but I never saw it that way. I saw it as trust, and I promised myself I'd return it to you 100-fold. Sevens. Tears blurred the words, but I forced myself to keep reading. For the past 5 years, I've been investing that money. Every raise, every bonus, every bit I could spare, I added to it. Mama, it's not just 62,000 anymore. It's 200,000. All in your name, in accounts only you can access. I wanted to make sure that no matter what happened, you'd never be at Shanice's mercy. Sevens. My breath caught. $200,000. Enough to start over, to live without fear. But more than the money, it was the proof. Malcolm had seen me. He had honored my sacrifice. I pressed the letter to my chest, sobbing quietly in that little viewing room. Not just tears of grief this time, but of gratitude. Even in death, my son was taking care of me. Beneath the letter was a folder thick with documents, bank statements, account numbers, investment portfolios, all organized neatly, with tabs and notes in Malcolm's handwriting. He had planned this. He had prepared for Shanice's cruelty. And now, for the first time since he left this world, I felt his presence again, guiding me, protecting me, reminding me I was never truly alone. Under the stack of investment papers lay another folder, thicker, heavier. Across the cover, Malcolm had written one word in bold letters: documentation. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were neatly labeled dividers, emails, screenshots of text messages, even photographs of credit card statements. The first section held printouts of Shanice's conversations with her sister. My stomach turned as I read her words. God, I can't wait until Amarise moves out. We'll turn her room into a home gym. Another text, just weeks before Malcolm's death. She thinks she's helping, but really, she's just dead weight. Malcolm only keeps her around because he feels sorry for her. Sevens. I pressed a hand to my mouth. I had suspected her cruelty, but seeing it in black and white cut deeper than any insult she had ever said to my face. Then came the credit card statements. Spa treatments, designer clothes, luxury dinners in Scottsdale. One line made my breath catch. Weekend trip to New York. Fortars 200. The date? Just 3 weeks before Malcolm died. Altogether, Shanice had burned through more than $10,000 in a single month. And yet, I remembered her standing in the kitchen, sighing about how tight money was, and how Malcolm and I needed to cut back on groceries. The memory made my chest ache, not just with anger, but with sorrow for the son who had believed her lies. The final divider contained emails between Shanice and Tyrone. They spoke about long-term plans, to pressure me into giving up my pension and Social Security. My hands went cold. They had been plotting to strip me of everything. Malcolm must have known. He had quietly gathered proof, piece by piece, for years. And now, in this little steel box, he had handed me the truth. I closed the folder slowly, my heartbeat steadying. Shanice thought she held all the power. She didn't realize my son had left me the very weapon that would undo her. Beneath the folders, tucked neatly in the corner of the box, was a second envelope. This one was smaller, sealed with tape, and on the front, Malcolm had written just 2 words. For Mama. My fingers shook as I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded with care. His handwriting was steady, deliberate, like he'd known these words had to last long after he was gone. Mama, it began, I know by now Shanice has shown you who she really is. I'm sorry for the pain I couldn't protect you from while I was alive. I stayed silent longer than I should have, hoping she'd change. But I saw the way she treated you, the way she tried to make you feel small, and I couldn't let her erase you after I was gone. Sevens. I paused, tears stinging my eyes, then kept reading. That's why I documented everything. Every cruel word, every lie, every dollar she wasted while pretending we were broke. I wanted you to have proof, not just of her betrayal, but of my love. Because this isn't about revenge, Mama. It's about justice. Shanice may think she's clever, but the truth has a way of speaking louder than any lie. Sevens. My throat tightened. Promise me one thing. The letter continued. Don't let her break you. Don't waste your life fighting fire with fire. Let the evidence speak for itself. Live free. Live proud. Use the money I built for you. Build a life where no one can ever make you feel unwanted again. That's all I ever wanted, to know you'd be safe. Sevens. At the bottom, he had written, All my love, always, Malcolm. Sevens. I held that letter against my chest, rocking back and forth in the quiet vault room. For the first time since his death, I felt his arms around me, steadying me, guiding me forward. Malcolm hadn't just left me money. He had left me a mission, to let the truth rise. The call came the morning after I left the bank. Shanice's voice on the other end was sugar sweet, too sweet. Amarise, darling, she said, like we were girlfriends catching up instead of enemies circling each other. Why don't you come over for lunch tomorrow? I made your favorite chicken salad. We can talk. Sevens. Every instinct in me said, don't go. But another part, the part Malcolm had prepared, whispered, go. Let her show her hand. So the next day, I drove back to the house that used to feel like home. Shanice opened the door in a flowing white dress, smiling like nothing had ever happened. The table was set with her wedding china, fresh flowers in a vase, iced tea poured into crystal glasses. If someone walked in off the street, they would have thought this was a reunion, not a battlefield. We sat across from each other. She filled my plate, chattered about the weather, about how the neighbors had been so supportive. I just listened, sipping my tea, waiting for her to stop circling. Finally, she leaned forward, lowering her voice. So, about that safety deposit box. I think it's best if we pool our resources. Combine whatever Malcolm left you with the life insurance. I know excellent financial advisors who can help us grow it. That way, we both benefit. Sevens. There it was. I set my fork down, met her eyes. That's thoughtful of you, Shanice. But curious, why would you assume there was anything valuable in the box? Sevens. She blinked, caught off guard. Well, Malcolm was always private about money matters. I just know he wouldn't keep something like that from me. Sevens. Private, I repeated. Interesting choice of word. Because what I found in that box wasn't meant for you. It was meant for me. Specifically. Sevens. The smile on her face cracked for the first time, just a hairline fracture. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small gift bag. I brought you something. Sevens. Her eyes lit up, greedy for whatever she thought I might reveal. She tore at the tissue paper and pulled out a framed photograph. Malcolm in his cap and gown, grinning on college graduation day. Her face softened for half a second. "Oh, this is lovely." "Sevens, I thought you should have it," I said evenly. "After all, you were such a devoted wife." "Sevens." Her eyes snapped up to mine, searching for the meaning beneath my words. The room went quiet. "What exactly did you find in that box, Amarise?" she finally asked, her voice tighter now. I let a small smile play at the corner of my lips. "Documents. Some financial, some personal. Very interesting reading." "Sevens." The color drained slightly from her cheeks. She knew. She didn't know what I had, but she knew it was enough. I picked up my fork again and took another bite of chicken salad, calm as a Sunday morning. "Shanice," I said lightly, "sometimes the truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how hard you try to bury it." Sevens. For the first time since Malcolm's death, I wasn't the one on the defensive. She was, and she knew it. The front door creaked open mid-meal, and the click of polished shoes echoed against the hardwood floor. Shanice's face brightened like she'd been waiting for this moment. "Perfect timing," she called. "Tyrone, join us." "Sevens." Her brother stepped into the dining room, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a charcoal suit that screamed money and confidence. He carried no warmth in his eyes, only calculation. "Well, well," he said smoothly, taking a seat without being offered. "The famous safety deposit box. I've been dying to hear about it." Sevens. I felt my stomach tighten, but I didn't let it show. I folded my napkin neatly in my lap. "This is a family lunch, not a courtroom," I said quietly. He smiled, sharp and humorless. "Oh, but everything is a courtroom, Mrs. Holloway. And I'm here to remind you, Arizona is a community property state. Anything Malcolm left, no matter where he put it, can be argued as marital assets, which means Shanice has a rightful claim." Sevens. Shanice sat straighter, emboldened by his words. "See? I told you. It's not just yours, Amarise. The law will back me." Sevens. I leaned back in my chair, meeting Tyrone's stare without flinching. "Funny. You're already talking about the law when you haven't even asked what's in the box. For all you know, it could be letters, photographs, memories." Sevens. Or it could be money, Tyrone shot back. "A lot of money. And if that's the case, you can bet we'll take it to court. Shanice deserves her share." Sevens. I let a small silence stretch between us, then folded my hands on the table. And what if Malcolm made it clear, legally clear, that whatever was in that box was mine, and mine alone? Would you still try to snatch it away? Sevens. Tyrone's smile faltered, just a fraction. He didn't like being reminded that his bravado might not hold up under scrutiny. "Don't mistake silence for surrender," he said finally. "We'll fight. And trust me, Mrs. Holloway, I win my fights." Sevens. Shanice smirked beside him, her eyes burning with triumph. But I didn't blink. I had Malcolm's words, Malcolm's plan, and Malcolm's evidence tucked safely away. Tyrone thought his threats could shake me. He had no idea how ready I was to let the truth speak for itself. I let Tyrone's words hang in the air for a moment, the silence pressing heavier than any argument I could have made. Then, calmly, I reached into my purse and set a thick manila folder on the table. Shanice's eyes widened. Tyrone's narrowed. "What's that?" he asked, his tone sharper now. "Documentation," I said simply. Malcolm was meticulous. He knew exactly what he was up against, and he wanted me to have the truth in black and white. "Sevens." I slid the folder open, pulled out the first set of pages, and laid them on the table. Here's a text from Shanice to her sister. God, I can't wait until Amarise moves out. We'll turn her room into a home gym. Dated 6 months ago. Here's another. She's dead weight. Malcolm only keeps her around because he feels sorry for her. Sevens. Shanice's face flushed crimson. She lunged for the papers, but I pulled them back with a steady hand. And here, I continued, flipping to the next section. Credit card statements. More than $10,000 in a single month. Spa treatments, designer clothes, even a weekend in New York. While you told Malcolm you couldn't afford groceries. Sevens. I could see Shanice shrinking, her polished mask cracking piece by piece. But I wasn't finished. I turned to Tyrone. And then, these. I spread out several printed emails across the table. Emails between you and your sister, discussing ways to push me out. Even tossing around the idea of getting access to my pension and Social Security. Sound familiar? Sevens. For the first time, Tyrone's confident smirk faltered. His jaw tightened, his hand clenched into a fist. You think these would hold up in court? I asked softly. Because I do. And so did Malcolm. That's why he kept them. Every cruel word, every scheme, every betrayal, you left a trail. And now, it's mine. Sevens. The room was silent except for the tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. Shanice stared at the table, her hands trembling. Tyrone sat rigid, his eyes darting between the pages like they might rearrange themselves into something less damning. I leaned back in my chair, calm and steady. You wanted a courtroom? Fine. But remember this. The truth doesn't need a lawyer. It speaks for itself. Sevens. For the first time all afternoon, neither Shanice nor Tyrone had anything to say. And in that silence, I felt Malcolm beside me, smiling. The silence stretched so long it felt like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Shanice's hands trembled in her lap, her perfect manicure digging into her palms. Tyrone leaned back in his chair, his jaw tight, his bravado drained away. For the first time since I'd walked in, I wasn't the one cornered. They were. You don't understand the pressure I'm under, Shanice whispered finally, her voice raw, stripped of its sugary coating. Everyone expects me to keep up appearances. The neighbors, my family. Do you have any idea how exhausting that is? Sevens. I stared at her, unflinching. I lost my son, Shanice. That's pressure. That's exhaustion. And yet, here you sit, mourning a lifestyle instead of a man. Sevens. Her eyes filled with tears, but not the kind born of love or regret. They were tears of defeat, of a woman realizing her performance was over and the audience had stopped applauding. Tyrone tried to salvage what he could. Even if this is true, he muttered, you can't prove Malcolm meant for all of this to be used against us. Sevens. I gathered the folder, tucking it back into my purse. I don't need to prove anything. Malcolm already did. And you two proved the rest just by opening your mouths. Sevens. I stood, smoothing the front of my dress, my voice steady. This lunch was enlightening. Thank you both. Sevens. Shanice reached out, desperation flashing across her face. Wait, Amarise, we can work this out. Please. Sevens. I paused at the doorway, turned back once. The only thing that needs to be worked out is how you live with yourselves. Malcolm saw who you were. And now, so do I. Sevens. The Arizona sun hit my face as I stepped outside, warm and steady. Behind me, the house that once held my laughter now echoed with silence and shame. For the first time in weeks, I walked away not as a victim, but as a woman carrying the truth. When I stepped out of Shanice's house, the Arizona sun was waiting for me like an old friend. It wrapped around my shoulders, warm and steady, a reminder that life keeps moving forward, even when your world feels broken. For weeks, I had carried only shadows, grief, betrayal, loneliness. But that afternoon, as I walked down the quiet Phoenix street, I felt something shift. The sky stretched wide and endless above me, the kind of blue that makes you believe in second chances. My feet felt lighter than they had in months. The weight of Shanice's cruelty, the fear of being left with nothing, it no longer sat heavy on my chest. Instead, I carried Malcolm's gift, not just the key or the money, but the proof that I was seen, loved, and protected. People passed by on the sidewalk, kids with backpacks, a woman pushing a stroller, a man walking his dog. Ordinary life unfolding. And for the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider looking in. I was part of it again. Not as someone's burden, not as someone's victim, but as a woman with dignity, a woman with choices. The brass key was gone from my purse, replaced with bank documents and Malcolm's letters, but its weight lingered. It had unlocked more than a steel box in a bank vault. It had unlocked my future. I tilted my face to the sun, let the warmth soak in, and whispered, "I'm still here, baby." I'm still standing. Sevens. For the first time since Malcolm's last phone call, I truly believed it. Back at the hotel, I spread the documents across the little desk by the window. Pages of account numbers, investment portfolios, balances that added up to $200,000. Every cent in my name. For weeks, I had stared at my dwindling savings, terrified of how long I could survive. Now, staring at Malcolm's careful notes and signatures, I realized I didn't just have money. I had freedom. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't someone's unwanted houseguest. I wasn't a woman living at the mercy of her daughter-in-law's moods. I wasn't a burden. I was a woman with her own foundation, her own security. I thought about Shanice's words, that Malcolm pitied me. She couldn't have been more wrong. What Malcolm left me wasn't pity. It was respect. It was proof that he trusted me to build a life beyond him, even after death. I picked up the letter again, traced my fingers over his handwriting, and let the truth sink in. I was no longer powerless. The world had shifted under my feet, and instead of crumbling, I was standing taller. It wasn't about the dollar amount, though Lord knows it meant survival. It was about dignity, about knowing I could walk into a leasing office, sign my own rental agreement, furnish a little place with things I chose, not cast-offs or charity. It was about waking up in the morning without wondering whose approval I needed to stay under their roof. For the first time in months, I looked at myself in the mirror and saw not just an aging woman carrying grief, but a survivor, with fire still in her eyes. I whispered to my reflection, You are enough, Amarise. And you always were. 7s. That evening, I sat by the hotel window, the Phoenix skyline glowing against the desert dusk. On the desk in front of me lay the papers Malcolm had left. Bank balances, investment statements, his neat handwriting scrawled in the margins. $200,000. My name on every line. But the money was only half the gift. The real treasure was what it meant. For the first time in years, I wasn't depending on anyone else's roof or mercy. Shanice could slam her doors, sneer about me being dead weight, and laugh about moving me out. But she no longer held a single ounce of power over me. I thought about those nights I'd gone to bed praying I wouldn't outlive my savings, about the way Shanice looked at me, like I was clutter to be thrown out with the trash. And then I looked back at the stack of documents, Malcolm's careful planning, and I felt something rise in me that had been buried deep. Pride. This wasn't charity. This wasn't pity. My son had honored the sacrifice I'd made when I gave him $62,000. He turned it into something greater, not just in numbers, but in dignity. He made sure his mama could stand tall, even in a world without him. I imagined walking into a leasing office soon, signing papers for my own apartment, decorating it with colors I loved, pictures of Malcolm on the walls, maybe even a rocking chair by the window where I could sip sweet tea at sunset. A place that was mine, not borrowed, not tolerated, but chosen. I caught my reflection in the darkened window. The lines on my face were still there, the grief still etched in my eyes, but there was something new too. Strength. And for the first time in a long time, I whispered to myself, "You're free now, Amarise. And you've earned it." 7s. Later that night, I pulled Malcolm's letters back out and read them again by the dim glow of the bedside lamp. His handwriting, firm, steady, looked like it had been written yesterday, not months ago. Each word carried his voice, as if he were sitting across from me, still calling me Mama in that deep, reassuring tone. I thought back to the last promise he made before I sold my little house and handed him that down payment. "Mama, don't you worry. I'll always take care of you." At the time, I smiled, thinking it was just a son's way of softening his mama's sacrifice. I never imagined those words would echo years later, after he was gone, and that they'd still be true. Because he had kept that promise. In every page of documentation, in every dollar carefully invested, Malcolm had woven his love into a safety net I didn't even know was there. He had seen Shanice for who she was, but more importantly, he had seen me for who I was, his mother, worthy of protection, of dignity, of peace. I closed my eyes and remembered the small things. The way he'd hold my hand in church, the way he'd kiss my cheek when he stopped by after work, the way he'd grin when he fixed something around the house. Simple moments, but strung together, they told the story of a man who never stopped loving his mama. The tears that came then weren't sharp with grief the way they'd been before. They were softer, warmer. I wasn't crying because of what I lost. I was crying because of what I still carried. His love, his loyalty, his promise kept. I whispered into the quiet room, "You did it, baby. You kept your word." 7s. And in that moment, I knew Malcolm was still with me. Not in body, but in every choice I made moving forward. As the weeks passed, I found myself breathing easier. The grief was still there, yes, but it no longer weighed me down like an anchor. Instead, it walked beside me, reminding me of the love that shaped my life. Shanice and Tyrone. Their schemes collapsed under the weight of truth. And me. I walked forward, not with revenge in my heart, but with dignity in my steps. Here's the lesson I've learned. Sometimes, the best justice doesn't come from fighting or shouting or dragging someone into court. Sometimes justice comes quietly, when lies are revealed, when masks fall, and when the truth finally stands on its own. My son didn't just leave me money. He left me proof that love is stronger than cruelty, and that respect lasts longer than greed. I thought Shanice had taken everything from me. But in reality, she only set the stage for Malcolm to show me, once again, that he had never stopped protecting his mama. So let me ask you this. Have you ever been underestimated, cast aside, or treated like you didn't matter, only to rise stronger because of it? If my story touched you, if it reminded you that truth always finds a way, then don't just scroll by. Hit that like button, leave a comment with your story, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you know someone who needs a reminder that karma is real, go ahead and share this. Because sometimes, the sweetest victory isn't revenge. It's living free, standing tall, and letting the truth speak louder than any lie.